Good afternoon and welcome to Heart Matters with Dr. Celeste, MD. Good afternoon and welcome. Very excited to share with you today about one of my favorite topics, hypertension. So we will give it a few minutes to allow a few people the chance to log on before we get started. And if you'd like, you can type hello in the text box as a comment so that we can know that you are joining us live here on Sunday afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. And welcome. Good afternoon. This is Heart Matters with Dr. Celeste, MD. Very excited again to share with you guys about one of my favorite topics today, hypertension. So we'll give it just a few more seconds before we get started. If you're joining us today, if you'll type hello and let us know that you're joining us. Very excited about the information that we're going to share today. Hi, Dr. Mashika. Thank you for joining us. Hi. Hi, Miss Patton. Thank you for joining us. Good afternoon. Awesome. So, and I apologize for the little slight delay of a minute or so. We're trying to make sure that we had a good network connection. This week we had a little bit of an issue or challenge with that last week, but very excited to share with you guys today about one of my favorite topics, hypertension. And so I think we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Hi, Rashawn. How are you? Good afternoon. Hi, Miss Black. How are you? And welcome. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so we won't belabor the point. We'll get started with you today. As you can tell, I'm probably very excited about the topic for today because it's something that I get excited about. But I'll go into a little more detail with you guys about that here in just a moment. For those of you who are watching who took time out of your Sunday afternoon to share with us, thank you so much. If you are watching this in replay, if you don't mind typing replay in the comment box, and even feel free or welcome to tag some of your friends. Today's topic is hypertension. And so it's really important for us to get this word out and help to champion people to better health because that's what this is about. Again, my name is Dr. Celeste Reese-Willis. I'm a board-certified urgent care physician, board-certified in family medicine, practicing urgent care medicine for over the last 14 years. And what I do every day is I'm blessed with the opportunity to aid busy moms and professionals in championing themselves into better health. And so as a part of that, we start sharing with you guys this month's topic has been Heart Matters, which is a subject that's very near and dear to my heart. And so I hope that you guys enjoy this information today. Hey, Deborah, how are you? That you enjoy this information that we're sharing with you today, and please feel free to share this with your family, with your friends, anyone that you feel like that it could help. So today's topic is hypertension or high blood pressure. So the reason we're discussing this topic today is, did you know that there are 103 million adults in the United States that suffer with hypertension or high blood pressure? So the first question is, what is hypertension? So blood pressure is the force that's exerted across the blood vessel wall. And so an elevated blood pressure is a pressure that's exerted across the blood pressure wall that's a little higher than it should be. Now, it can be higher in varying degrees. There are two numbers that we look at. There's your systolic and your diastolic number. If you've ever had your blood pressure taken before, they've shared with you a top number and a bottom number. That top number is your systolic number. That is the blood pressure at which your heart is beating. The diastolic or bottom number is the force that's created as your heart rests. So how will you know if you have elevated blood pressure? Well, recently guidelines have changed in the last few years such that a normal blood pressure, hi Dr. Jaquel, thank you for joining. A normal blood pressure is 120 over 80 or less. So a normal blood pressure is 120 over 80 or less. Mild or borderline hypertension is considered to be blood pressure that's 120 to 130 over 80 or less. So let's go back over that. So the normal blood pressure is 120 over 80 or less. Borderline hypertension is blood pressure that's 120 to 130 over 80 or less. Stage 1 or mild hypertension is considered blood pressure that's 131 to 140 over 80s to 90s. That's mild hypertension. Stage 2 hypertension is considered to be blood pressure that's 140 over 90s or higher. Hi, Dr. Carla. Thank you for joining us. So if you have blood pressure that's elevated, if you have a reading of an elevated blood pressure in any of these categories, if you have just one reading, does that mean that you have a diagnosis of hypertension? No. Typically, a diagnosis of hypertension is not made until you have at least 2 readings on at least 2 or more occasions that show an elevated blood pressure in any of those ranges. So that's the definition for high blood pressure, hypertension. Let's talk about some of the risk factors. One of the main risk factors for having hypertension is family history. So family history is a risk factor. Having high cholesterol is a risk factor. Having diabetes is a risk factor for having hypertension. Physical inactivity is a risk factor for having hypertension. Having an elevated sodium intake, more than 1,500 milligrams of sodium a day is considered a higher sodium diet. So you kind of have to watch your sodium intake, but we'll talk about that a little bit later with some foods that you should avoid. Heavy alcohol use. Generally, they don't recommend that men drink more than 2 drinks a day and women 1 drink a day, and anything regular heavy consumption of alcohol has been linked to having high blood pressure. Smoking is also a risk factor for having hypertension, as well as obesity. In addition to that, obstructive sleep apnea, which was last week's topic, is also a risk factor for having hypertension. So let's go back to one of the risk factors. Having family history of hypertension. Hi, Mr. Harbin. Thank you for joining us. And hi, Dr. Carla. Thank you for joining. And hi, Dr. Jaquel. So those are the risk factors. Yes, Dr. Jaquel, thank you for sharing that in the comments list, what those risk factors are. So I want to share, is it okay with you if I share my story with you? If I'm just transparent and honest with you? I hope that it is. One of the reasons why hypertension is something that's so important to me in helping to champion and educate patients about it is that it's a challenge that I deal with myself. As I shared previously, thank you, Dr. Jaquel. As I shared previously in one of my other broadcasts, my mom has suffered with hypertension since she was in her late 30s. When she was in her late 40s, she actually underwent a 4-vessel bypass. The year that she underwent that bypass, it was my first year of medical school. So for me, that was something that was kind of transformational. It made me kind of filter medicine through a different filter, a different light. And so because I knew and was learning about medicine, I knew, well, if this is what my mom's history is, this means that this is something that I'm subject to have. So as I learned about it, I began to create kind of an energy within me to not let hypertension have me, but for me to tackle it. And not only for me to tackle it, but for me to inspire and educate and encourage my patients, my family, my friends to do the exact same thing. And that's part of the reason why I'm sharing with you today, because it is a challenge that I face daily. So I'm sharing with you something now. Hi, Mr. Lillis. How are you? So this is something that I'm sharing with you now. This is something that I deal with on a daily basis. And so I'm sharing that in the hopes that that will provide you with some encouragement as well. So I see that Dr. Jaquel has written that she has a family history as well. So this is something that we can actually help to champion each other to actually beat this disease, because it doesn't have to have you. I'm a living witness to that. So let's move on before I get too excited, because I tend to get excited about this topic, to treatment. So there are various forms of treatment, and what your treatment is varies depending on the stage of hypertension. If you recall, I talked about mild hypertension in stage 1, stage 2, and then there's stage 3, which is called hypertensive crisis. If you have a blood pressure, if you go and get your blood pressure checked and it's 180 over 120 or higher, we consider that hypertensive crisis. And so what that means is that you need to seek immediate medical attention. You can be treated for your blood pressure with medications, obviously, but Other ways that you can try and help prevent yourself from developing high blood pressure, if you're someone especially that has family history, is to get active. We've talked about this before, exercising for 150 minutes a week. That is something that can be challenging, and I promise you, I understand that. Sometimes I have very long and challenging days. There are days that I have off where it's easy for me to get to my tort class that I go to and that I enjoy, but there are other days when it's more of a challenge. You know, if I know it's going to be a long day, but I have to kind of coach myself up and say, okay, Celeste, you've got to get up. You've got to get up a little early. I know you got a long day today, but you've got to condition your heart to decrease the likelihood that you'll worsen your hypertension and or decrease the likelihood that I myself will suffer a cardiac event. And so I encourage you and implore you to do this with yourself. And I understand, I hear my patients say, hey, Dr. Celeste, it's not easy. I'm busy, especially if you're a busy mom, you're busy professionals, you have things going on, you have kids, you have things to do. I get it. But self-care is very important. So let's move on a little bit. So with treatment, get active, there are medications, maintain a healthy weight, but reduce your sodium intake. So let's move on to foods that you should avoid. There is something that's called DASH, which is the dietary approach to stop hypertension. And what that is a meal plan that involves basically decreasing or limiting your red meat intake, your sodium intake, as well as sweets or added sugars to beverages and such. So let's talk about some of those foods that we should avoid. I actually have a few samples of them. So Vienna sausages. This is something, and it's a little tiny can, 4 ounces, but guess what? It has 630 milligrams of sodium in one can. You're supposed to only have 1,500 milligrams a day, so if you eat this, you've already tanked yourself at nearly half of what your sodium intake should be. Potato chips. These, in particular, very salty, something that can increase your blood pressure. Gatorade is one of those hidden things that has a lot of sodium in it that I encourage my patients to limit their intake of Gatorade. Tomato sauces is something that also has a very high sodium content, and so I encourage my patients to limit that intake as well. So let's kind of recap here. We talked about hypertension and what it was. We talked about the risk factors. We talked about those things that are important for us to do to try and decrease our likelihood of developing it, number one. If you have family history, you are at a stronger risk of developing hypertension. So it's important to kind of model and control that early on so that you decrease the likelihood that you'll develop hypertension. But if you do have it, that you can help to keep it manageable. So we talked about getting active, 150 minutes of exercise every week, however you have to do it. For me, if I can't get to Lewis's tort class, then I am going to the Y next door to run on the treadmill to get my cardio in before I go into work. We talked about watching our sodium intake. Vienna sausages, potato chips, stay away from these things, guys. Hydrate yourself. And so I just want to encourage you guys today to think about something. That you can, if you think about the things in life that we can replace our job, you can replace your car, you can replace your house. If something unfortunate happened, you can replace clothing, but guess what? You absolutely cannot replace your body. God only gives us one of them. So I would encourage you to invest in it, take care of it, hydrate it, nourish it, and condition it. And let's help to champion each other to better health. If you enjoyed today's broadcast, thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I see Mr. Craig, who's a very good patient of mine, and Mr. Alex. Thank you for joining us today. If this information has been beneficial for you, please do not hesitate to share it with some of your family and friends. Thank you so much for tuning in. Feel free to follow me on social media on my fan page at facebook.com Dr. Celeste MD. Again, it's facebook.com/Dr. Celeste MD, DOCTORCELESTE MD. Thanks so much for tuning in, and tune in next week. We're going to have a very exciting topic next week talking about the benefits of drinking water. So go out today and enjoy your Sunday afternoon. I know I'm here in Birmingham, Alabama, and it's beautiful outside, and have had a wonderful day and relaxing time. So thanks so much, you all, for tuning in. Feel free to share this with other people. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. Hi, Sarah Allison. How are you? Have a great night.